I would like to go on to the second slide and advise that we have interpretation. So if you speak Spanish or Korean, we have the interpretation available for you. To have access to it, I suggest you look at the bottom line of your screen. You will see some icons. One of the icons is a global icon. When you click on it, you can choose either Spanish or Korean so that you can get the interpretation that works for you. So we're going to give it a few seconds for people to join their language rooms. All right, thank you all. So as I said earlier, my name is Kofi Kwasi, and I'm part of the budget team in the office of Supervisor Holly Mitchell. On our team, we have Kurt Shelton, who's also the Assistant Chief Deputy. We also have Maeve Giza, and we have Vicky Way. Again, thank you all so much. Before we start, we have a few questions that we'd like to ask you, and we are going to have a quick poll to see who's here, and whether you live in the district and whatnot, because we want to know, our audience. So give us a second, and we're going to share the poll, and we'll thank you so much for answering those questions. So we're going to give it a few seconds for folks to answer the poll questions. And hi to everyone who's joining in. I'm seeing all the comments in the chat. Again, thank you for joining us. We're just giving a few seconds for folks to answer the questions. We have 79 participants so far, and we have a few poll questions that we'd like you guys to answer, please, because we would like to know our audience. And now we have 80, and 81 is growing. So thank you for joining us. All right, we're going to we're going to close the polls now. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. And without further ado, I'm going to invite over our fearless leader, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, to start us off for tonight.
Thanks a million, Kofi. I appreciate you and my entire team, Mitchell. And thank you to all of our translators, our ASL translators, as well as the Spanish and Korean language translators. I appreciate you all. And welcome all of you to my world of budget nerddom. if you've now participated in 3 budget town halls, IW, like me and Kofi and Kirk and Maeve, budget nerds. So welcome to our elite club. We appreciate you participating. Again, this is our third and final budget town hall for this year, but I really hope that you all will stick with us and share in this process with us for years to come. Just a quick recap. In April, when the county CEO introduced their recommended county budget, we came to you to discuss our priorities for the current fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year, 22-23. Then in May, we followed up with a second budget town hall to hear from you about your most pressing needs. Earlier this month, the board approved the supplemental changes to the budget, which is the final part of the annual county budget process. So today, we wanted to share with you how our priorities, many of whom were informed by you participating in these town halls and sharing your priorities with us. We want you to know how they are indeed going to be supported in the fiscal year. My team worked fearlessly to leverage the various funding sources to support some of our most people-centered programs. Our team has been looking for funding opportunities using county funds, state, federal revenue, special one-time allocations like the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. We call that ARPA for short, so you'll know what we're talking about. We fought for supporting local programs addressing the socioeconomic effects of the pandemic through an equity-driven framework for ARPA. I'm really proud of that work. And quite frankly, our equity lens that we've used in allocating our ARPA dollars has brought us to the attention of the White House and the federal government. And we've received pats on the back and congratulations, because the way we have focused our ARPA spending using this equity toolkit and this equity lens is exactly what the federal government wanted local governments to do. So we stepped up to the plate and we're leading nationally. We fought to support diversion and reentry services, as well as mental health services in the community and in our jails through a combination of Care First community investment, as well as something called our AB 109 realignment funds. We fought to provide structures for programs supporting robust and, again, people-centered homelessness disrupting systems. And we fought to get more services for children, families, as well as our seniors. Although we're completing the annual budget cycle for 22-23, this is also really a new beginning. You know, the budget cycle is just that. As you wrap up one budget, it's time to start the conversation about the budget for next year. And so we are in a strong position to continue our work to direct county funds towards our equity and people-centered priorities for next year. We welcome the opportunity to work with you all to help us prioritize our limited county funds to meet the urgent needs of our community. I'm looking forward to our ongoing partnership, our really robust conversations around both identifying challenges in our communities and the fiscal solutions that we can all come up with and bring to bear. So I have a personal favor to ask you all, now that you have been dubbed budget nerds, that you really stay engaged, that you keep believing in the process, that you keep believing in me and what the county can bring to bear to create the kind of second district that we all want to grow old in with dignity, and a second district in which our children can thrive. All of us are depending on each other. Our communities, our family, friends, and neighbors, our institutions are really going to be reliant on us working hard together to get this done. As I often say in these kinds of meetings, you know, we may not always agree all the time, but please know that I and Team Mitchell will always do our best to get it right for the county as a whole. So Kofi, thank you very much for leading us in this process. I always enjoy engaging in it, and I'll kick the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. Been a pleasure working these processes. So for the audience, now we're going to show you a 2-minute clip of the supplemental budget, which is the part of the budget that we just completed with the county. And then I'll go ahead and show you a swim lane of the county budget process before we actually start and dive into the conversation. Vicky, we cannot hear. All right, give us 1 second. So I think what we're trying to share with you was a video that the CEO put together, and that was presented at the recent at the supplemental budget board meeting, where it shows a visual of how the county budget works. Our goal today, prior to diving into the conversation and actually showing you what we've done this year, is to give you a high level and high understanding of what the budget is. So right in front of you is a swim lane of the county budget process. It all starts with departments around from March to October talking or amongst themselves or with the CEO about what the budget or the level of resources for the next year will be. And then, all that leads out to, in April, having the recommended budget, which the CEO presented. And at recommended budget is when we had our first budget town hall. And at that first budget town hall, we came here and we told you about some of the priorities that we had as an office. And those priorities were what we, throughout the year, fought for in order to get to where we are today. And in May, we came back again to you to hear about you, because at the May, final changes meeting, we saw that the community did not get enough time to really talk to us and talk to the board about what their issues were. So we had that listening session, and we were so grateful to hear from you, because that also allowed us to not only give us the strength to continue the fight, but also allowed us to really understand how our priorities align with the community and how urgent the need was. And this culminated into what recently happened, which is the supplemental budget. And after the supplemental budget passed, we wanted to come back to you to close the loop. So in April, we told you about our priorities. In May, we heard about you. And now what we want to do is to tell you how we've done and how we fared as far as our priorities are. So without further ado, I think we are going to start with the first one of our team members, who will be talking to you about her priority issues and how she has fared this year. So,
should I?
Carolyn, yep.
Yep. Hi, everyone. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Carolyn Terosis, and I have the honor of being Supervisor Mitchell's Senior Deputy for Economic and Workforce Development. Also joined here by my teammates, Sarah Harris and Pamela Leo. So in terms of the priorities for economic opportunity this year, really, as you've probably heard Supervisor Mitchell mention many times, we are here to build back with equity. And it's particularly opportune that we're doing that now because we've just also created a brand new Department of Economic Opportunity. That department was fully funded this year. We're in the process of hiring staff to handle everything from small business development, technical assistance, legal assistance, projects around community development, economic development projects that return dollars to our local communities and build economic opportunity from within. And then also consolidating all of our programs countywide around workforce development. And I've heard from a lot of you around the priorities of getting folks back to work in quality, what we consider to be high road jobs. That means jobs that provide for a living wage, benefits, pension, et cetera. And so this year specifically, we were able to get the CEO to allocate $70 million to an economic opportunity grant program. And that is specifically a grant program targeting small employers. We say small employers because that means everything from nonprofits to small businesses, faith-based organizations, et cetera. We are targeting that money in the communities that have been the hardest hit by the pandemic, that have had the worst health outcomes, economic outcomes, et cetera, because we need to serve our communities that have been hardly reached, as Supervisor Mitchell likes to say. So $70 million there, prioritizing hardly reached communities. And then another $25 million that we got allocated for our economic mobility initiative. And that initiative targets women and people of color, businesses that are owned by individuals who have had a harder time accessing capital. And this program gives them everything from entrepreneurship, assistance, mentorship, access to capital, access to both loans and grants, might I add, as well as commercial lease assistance. And finally, what I think we're really proud of is we've piloted a commercial acquisition fund led by Supervisor Mitchell countywide to help our small BIPOC-owned businesses acquire the property that they're renting and build wealth through ownership, through business ownership and land ownership of the commercial land. So proud on those fronts. Finally, looking forward this year to the redesign of our public workforce system. And so when I talked about those high road jobs earlier, making sure that we're aligned towards quality jobs and working with those who have traditionally been the hardly hired, the hardest to hire, people with potentially records, people who have been formerly homeless, justice involved, like I mentioned, former foster youth, et cetera. So really targeting our resources around workforce development to quality jobs for those who have been overlooked. And then another initiative that we're really proud of this year that we've gotten fully funded is our poverty alleviation initiative. We are currently in the midst of executing BREATHE, which is the LA County's guaranteed income program. That's 3,000 individuals, 1,000 individuals for 3 years with $1,000 a month that we're disseminating. We also launched this year the guaranteed income program for our transition age youth. That's 300 youth who in August started receiving $1,000 a month. And then really proud that we're going to be expanding this to a third guaranteed income program, which we've applied to the state for matching funds for. So we have heard the urgent need for cash assistance and flexible cash assistance. We are scaling that up. And we've also now released the strategic plan for poverty alleviation, which I'll put in the chat. Many of you weighed in on that, and we're still looking for feedback as we work together countywide to really solve poverty. So with that being said, really proud of our successes this year, and I will turn it back over to Kofi.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Now we're going to move on to the next team member, who will be talking about, the health and wellness priorities of this office. And thank you, Yolanda, for taking this on.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Yolanda Vera, and I am the Senior Deputy for Health and Wellness for Supervisor Mitchell, along with Jessica Ju, who's currently on maternity leave. So we're being helped out by Sally Malone. And then we also have some other folks who help us, a fellow named Katrina Manrique, and then Lily Sofiani, who helps us on homeless mental health issues. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that were happening around health priorities. And we heard from many of you about a need to infuse significant funds into our health and wellness efforts. And I think we were quite happy and pleased with the infusion of Rescue Act funds that we received. And I'll say a little bit more at the end of my comments about how there's so much more that we need to do. As to the Rescue Act, thanks to the supervisor's focus on equity related issues, there was a huge infusion of funds to the three health departments, the Department of Health Services, Department of Public Health, and the Department of Mental Health, that then trickled out to our community groups for COVID response efforts. And among the things, and I'll just list a few, there was 95 million that went to the Department of Health Services for community testing, and they went into high need communities with justice involved individuals. There was a significant infusion of dollars in beds for individuals with justice experience who were being helped by the Office of Diversion and Reentry. And so they created more beds to decompress our overcrowded jails. And they also created a job sector program based in the Compton area to really help individuals who want to get a job. They want to transform their lives and just get some mentorship to get work. Then there was a significant infusion in a unit of the Department of Health Services called Housing for Health, which focuses on individuals. They may have mental health issues with high risk of becoming homelessness. And they got a significant infusion of dollars, whether it's voucher dollars. It's roughly 100 million or so, actually around 200 million that went to those types of programs for individuals at risk of homelessness. If you look at the Department of Public Health, their range of money that they got was everything from trauma prevention to market match for individuals who may need help getting groceries and food, to obviously public health response in terms of COVID. And there also was an infusion of funds for domestic violence. And then when you look over at the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Mental Health used its COVID investment for its crisis response. As some of you have heard, and some of you have come to our meetings to hear about 988, which is a phone number everyone can call if you know an individual in a mental health crisis and you need help. This is something we need to expand more. They got a good investment of Rescue Act funds. So the good news is then the significant investment of one-time funding. We also got an expansion of staff. In correctional health, that's the arm of the Department of Health Services that's in the jails that tries to keep individuals who are incarcerated safe. They needed an infusion of funds for more staff to expand their mental health services and crisis services. So we were able to get $36 million for 146 new positions ongoing to support those services. What else needs to happen in the future? Expect the supervisor to follow up on some of her existing work on reproductive health care in response to the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade. You'll see more work from the supervisor. She's already done work on healthcare workforce shortages, huge issue affecting many of our public and private partners. We need to attract quality providers in our community to serve our communities and to stay in our communities. And then finally, I think we're going to be starting to scratch our heads on how can we do things like enhancing the reimbursement rates on Medi-Cal so that doctors want to practice in our state and in our county. So that's what I will sum up for now. And I thank you all for your inspiration. Please keep the comments and wisdom coming. We couldn't do this work without you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. No, we could not do this work without you. So now we're going to have Mr. John Matthews come and talk to us about his policy issues and priorities.
Thanks, Kofi. Good evening and welcome to everybody. I'm John Matthews, Senior Justice Deputy for Supervisor Mitchell. Happy to be in community with you all. I'm joined by my colleagues, Natalia Romo, Chris Asan, and Cassandra Angel. I always love following Yolanda because justice and health teams work so closely together. In the area of justice, we listen to your input and feedback. And I first want to highlight the budget expansion we've seen for ODR, the Office of, oh, I'm sorry, my camera's not on. Okay, here we go. In the area of justice, we listen to your input and feedback. I want to first highlight the budget expansion we've seen for ODR, the Office of Diversion and Reentry, which Supervisor Mitchell previously mentioned in her introduction. With your support, our office continues to push for a Care First vision in LA County. And Care First means meeting people where they are and addressing their needs, including their housing and mental health needs. We have a crisis in our jail. As of today, there are 14,860 people in LA County jails. According to the Vera Institute of Justice, there are 5,954 people suffering from mental illness. We do not believe that these people will get well in a cell. Our office has recognized the urgency of this situation, and we introduced two motions: one, to sustain, and two, to expand the ODR housing program that gets people out of jail who are suffering from mental illness and provides housing and wraparound mental health services in order to achieve true public safety. This year, we saw a budget expansion that will increase ODR's capacity to serve from 2,200 beds to 2,950 beds. With you, we'll continue to advocate for these critical investments to get people to the care they need. Another budget expansion we're excited to see in the area of justice is increased funding for the Office of Violence Prevention. OVP is an initiative with the Department of Public Health that works to strengthen coordination, capacity, and partnership to address the root causes of violence and advance policies and practices that are grounded in race equity to prevent all forms of violence. We know there's violence in our communities. We want to address the root causes. This year, we see an increase of $3.4 million to expand the work of OVP. Our office has also used SPA funding to elevate some of the work of the Office of Violence Prevention, but funding organizations that are doing this work in our district, like Southern California Crossroads and Sentinella Youth Services. As always, shout out to Urban Peace Institute. Much love for the folks that have been doing this work for a long time. In addition, we'd like to note that the Family Assistance Program has finally been moved to the Department of Public Health and funded with a $1.53 million of ongoing funding. For those of you who don't know, the Family Assistance Program is aimed at improving compassionate communication and providing trauma-informed support to families of those who have died following a fatal use of force by the Sheriff's Department. We hear from community all the time. This is a critical support for these families. And we appreciate you all for joining us and continue to give us feedback. We'll begin this advocacy process regarding the budget right away. So looking forward to hearing more from you and, creating a thriving second district with your support. Thanks, Kofi, and thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you so much for your presentation. Isela? You're muted, Isela.
Hi, everybody. I'm Isela Gracian. I'm Senior Deputy on Homelessness and Housing, and I'm joined by Lily Sofiani, Pamela Leo, Sarah Harris, and Francisco Lopez. And I'm going to share out on some of the work and dollars that we have in the county budget around homelessness and housing. And these are a couple highlights because the work is very extensive in this area. So we are all very much aware of our housing and homelessness crisis across the entire county. And this is definitely one priority area that we hear from you all, from constituents, and at every meeting around the need to solve the housing and homelessness crisis. So one of the programs that we have at the county is called the Flexible Housing Subsidy Pool, which allows us the flexibility at a very local level to provide rental assistance to individuals and families in need. This year, we have a little over $200 million to work on our homelessness and affordable housing. Of this, $100 million is dedicated to affordable housing program, or also known as the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which we use $75 million towards the building of new construction that's managed by the Los Angeles County Development Authority. This fund really allows affordable housing developers to leverage state and federal dollars and other programs to build new developments for permanent housing options. Important for us to note that in order for us to get to a point of what we call functional zero and solving the homelessness crisis, we need to be able to have, for every one interim bed, 5 permanent options. That will allow us to really move the pipeline of people that are in temporary or interim housing into permanent housing options. We also need to focus our efforts into preventing people into falling into homelessness. This connects up with some of the points that John shared under the justice area, because one of the main populations that fall into homelessness are people that are re-entering from incarceration, folks that are exiting foster care, and folks that are exiting the medical system. So for our team, and when it comes to the budget, we're really looking at that whole spectrum of where we prevent people from falling into homelessness, providing the services, as well as the connections to permanent housing options, which is the second part that you see in the slide, where we are increasing the capacity for our longer range planning and supports for housing and homelessness system overall. So in this year's budget, we have a total of almost $700 million in our homelessness initiative. For the county, this is where we have all of our housing programs. They go through our homelessness initiative. And this funding, about a little over 87% of it comes from the voter initiative, Measure H, that really allows us to support the interim housing, the temporary housing, support some permanent housing, as well as providing those services through the organizations that partner with the county. So the Measure H dollars are really important for us to be able to continue to invest overall in the programs that really support people moving into homes and providing the services that people need in order to sustain that housing. And again, this is an area that we hear a lot from constituents. We also understand that we can't move as fast as people would like to see to have a more impact, but sustaining this funding, growing that funding is how we will get to a bigger scale and be able to start seeing more visibility around removing that challenges that we have in providing the necessary housing and services for the folks that are unsheltered. So thank you again for joining us today, and I will pass it to my next colleague.
Thank you, Isela. And thank you, Chris, for talking to us about your policy priorities and your budget priorities.
Thank you, Isela, and thank you, Kofi, and good evening, everyone. A lot of progress has been made in the realm of arts and culture this year. Oh, and by the way, my name is Chris Asan, and I am the Supervisor's Deputy for Arts and Culture and Justice. If we could go next, thank you. So our first priority is the expansion of the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture's Organizational Grants Program, also known as the OGP. OGP is a grant administered by the Department of Arts and Culture, which provides flexible funding for arts organizations to support a wide range of costs, not typically supported by other grant sources. This approach to granting unlocks opportunities for small organizations in underserved communities to gain access to arts funding they're historically locked out of. After several years of hard work from community advocates, the Board of Supervisors finally took steps towards the expansion of this grant during the supplemental budget by approving $221,000 in funding to support grant administration. The ultimate goal is to double the grant, which would require an additional $4.5 million in funding, which would likely be phased in over multiple years. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that anyone who is interested should check out the Department of Arts and Culture's website for grant sources, which can be found at lacountyarts.org. And I will drop that link in the chat momentarily. So if you are an arts organization or a community organization that uses arts-based strategies, please consider applying for these grants. And let's make sure that the second district will benefit from the hard work of the advocates who made this possible. So that's it for the OGP. Our second priority is the creation of an expansion space for the Los Angeles County Museum of Art at Magic Johnson Park, also known as LACMA. This project is the next step in bringing the museum and its programs to communities around LA County, enabling LACMA to share the benefits of its assets and programs more equitably. It's an opportunity to support and continue building out a cultural hub right in South Los Angeles, providing an enhanced space for community members to enjoy and come together. Community discussions have been held over several years and are continuing, and we anticipate that ongoing funding will be needed to support operations and programs. We also anticipate some concrete work to begin as work on the Wilshire project reaches completion. And with that, I will hand it off to my next colleague.
Thanks, Chris. Good to see your face too. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelvin Driscoll. I am Senior Deputy to Supervisor Mitchell, covering the Human Services and Child Welfare portfolio, along with my colleagues, Marina Escobedo and Tracy McGee. I will take the next slide. I hope you all are seeing kind of the thread that's weaving through all the work that my colleagues and I are doing on the budget front in listening to community, taking your feedback seriously, and trying to think about the ways in which we lift communities. Two priorities for the Human Services and Child Welfare portfolio. I definitely wish we could talk about all of them, but I think these two really display how we're thinking about the intersection of both human services and child welfare and listening to our coalition partners. So the first, not always fun, but handling a structural deficit within our Children's Services Department. And I think while it's not always, again, the most fun, what it does do is allow us to realize the vision that many community members have been talking about in separating out child protection functions from the department and then thinking about how we build our child and family well-being system across the county. And so handling the structural deficit is the first step in really thinking about how we clarify the two roles within the department. And then really exciting is the work that the task force has been engaged in, that the supervisor's motion convened, which is the Office of Prevention Services. Very pleased with the executive director of ARDI, our Anti-Racist Diversity and Inclusion Initiative, is leading that work to really look at how we build out services on the front end. And this is really guided by thinking that we want to lift all communities, we want to lift all families so that they don't need to interact negatively with a lot of our systems here in the county. So thanks to my colleagues across our portfolios and our budget team for helping us to secure the dollars to start some of that front end prevention work and as well coordinate the implementation of services. And as a supervisor mentioned, would invite you all to continue to be engaged with us as we continue on the budget process across so many of our portfolios. With that, I think that's it for me, Kofi. I'll toss back to you.
So much, Kelvin, for telling us about your work. And now we have Laura from the team.
Thanks, Kofi. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Muraida, and I'm Senior Deputy for Environmental Justice with Supervisor Mitchell. Thanks for joining us tonight. So I'd like to hit on two priorities related to environmental justice. And first is that I'd like to highlight that last year, the Board of Supervisors unanimously passed Supervisor Mitchell's motion to end new drilling permits, oil drilling permits, and begin a process to phase out existing oil drilling. This is a longstanding environmental justice issue that impacts the Black and Brown residents of LA County and the 2nd District in particular. In fact, the largest urban oil field in the nation is in our district. This is the Inglewood oil field. And so it's no coincidence that we see higher rates of asthma, low birth weight, and other reproductive impacts in the neighborhoods that are really at the fence line of oil drilling operations. We know that the passage of a policy isn't the end. So there's always important work to do to ensure that a policy is implemented. And so we're excited that in this year's budget, we secured funding for a study that will help inform our phase out plans. We expect the findings of this study to come out in the next year. We're also anticipating a report to come out soon with recommendations for ensuring that our workers and impacted communities are protected and prioritized as we embark on this transition. So the work really continues from here. The second update that I'd like to share is a priority that was identified in previous budget town halls, park safety. We know that our second district communities and the students and the families that live here are impacted by violence in parks, and that we really need to find long-term and systemic solutions to prevent violence without over-policing. We're excited to say that the Parks After Darks program, which is one solution that really ensures that we have a lot of programming and events and just opportunities for young people to be engaged in parks and really activates our parks, was funded at $10.5 million. What is also important is that a significant portion is in ongoing funding, meaning that we don't have to fight for funding year after year. We're also hoping to do more. We know that this really is an important priority and that this alone isn't going to solve the problem. So we'll also be looking at creative ways to reduce violence and increase healing in our communities. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my next colleague. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Lily O'Brien, and I'm Senior Deputy for Transportation and Infrastructure for Supervisor Mitchell, and really pleased to be with you all. And I think, Kofi, I am the last on the list. So thanks to you all for ingesting a lot of information this evening on a Monday night. I will be quick on priorities for this year's budget. So we'll start with Delete the Divide. This is Supervisor Mitchell's effort to crush the divide of households who have access to internet and households that do not. In Los Angeles County, and particularly in the second district, as many as 30% of our households in certain communities in the second district lack access to broadband in their homes. And that is disproportionately among Black and Brown communities. So Supervisor Mitchell, along with a number of her colleagues on the board, have been pushing hard to delete that divide between households. And this year, we're really proud that in the budget process, we were able to secure $65 million in American Rescue Plan funds to build out what we call community broadband network in our households that have the greatest disparities in broadband access. This wasn't everything that we asked for. This is also one-time funds for one-time infrastructure, but we have ongoing need for staffing in this space to ensure that we have a more sustained solution to provide affordable and fast broadband to our households. The second priority that we hear a lot from community about is traffic safety and street safety from speeding cars and excessively dangerous driving behavior on residential streets. In the second district, more people die from traffic-related crashes than anywhere else in the county, at a rate of 2 to 1 compared to the rest of the county. So half of all fatal traffic crashes happen in the second district. The county itself and our office are responsible for the streets and the unincorporated communities. And we hear from unincorporated areas about excessive speeding on streets, about, you're worried about your kid walking to school and, being hit by a car. And we take that very personally. But we were not able to secure funds in the budget this year for street safety and what we call our Vision Zero initiative. So we will continue that fight, and the supervisor unanimously carried and passed a motion in August directing the county to propose a budget for this coming fiscal year that would solve traffic safety in the county of Los Angeles and county unincorporated roads. We're waiting with bated breath to see what that report back looks like. We think that we need to be smarter with the dollars that we do have for transportation and street safety related issues to tackle the issues where they're happening the most. And we know where those areas are. We need to put our money where those issues are happening. So those are the two priority infrastructure and transportation related issues that we will continue to champion in this next budget cycle. And we so appreciate the feedback from community on these two items. Thanks, Kofi.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Lily. Now I think we want to hear from you and have another poll about what issue areas or policy areas our audience today thinks we should focus on for next year, or what are the policy areas that are of importance to you. So we are about to share a poll, and thank you so much for providing your feedback, and we'll leave it about 3 minutes for folks to answer. Thank you. Thank you. Again, we are at a part of this presentation where we'd like to hear from the public. On your screen, there's a poll that is popping up, and what we'd like to know is for you, our audience today, to tell us which policy areas are the most important in the district. Thank you for your responses. Looks like we have one participant who cannot see the poll. Okay. It should be a pop-up over your screen. You're not seeing anything at the center of your screen, or oh, okay. Are you using your cell phone? For those who can see the poll. Laptop, okay. All right, so I'm going to read out the question for those who can't see it, and we're going to put it on the chat just so that those who see, you guys can provide your responses. Give us 1 second. We're just going to put that the polling questions on the chat for people to answer, and we also will be emailing those poll questions to the audience. Yes, we're going to post the questions on the chat just for you guys to see. And I'm seeing that some people are already talking about the highest priority for the district. So thank you. And thank you. We have two of our team members who put the survey questions on the chat. So thank you we're gonna give 3 more minutes for folks to provide their responses. Thank you. If you just joined us on the chat, we have one last poll question that 2 of our team members entered. And then it says, which of these policy areas do you think is most important for the second district to focus on in 2023? 1, arts; 2, child wellness; 3, economic and workforce development; 4, environment and sustainability; 5, health and mental health; 6, human services and public benefits; 7, homelessness and housing; 8, justice reform and adult youth; 9, parks and open spaces; and 10, transportation and infrastructure. This is our opportunity to hear from you guys. So please, provide us with your feedback so that we can hear from you. Thank you guys so much again. We have 106 participants. So please, we'd like to see a lot of responses. Thank you again. Looks like we got about 30 responses. Please make your voice be heard. We'd like to know what your perspective is as to the priority that we should focus on for next year. And we have 10 options. 1, arts; 2, child wellness; 3, economic and workforce development; 4, environment and sustainability; 5, health and mental health; 6, human services and public benefits; 7, homelessness and housing; 8, justice reform and adults and youth; 9, parks and open spaces; and 10, transportation and infrastructure. Thank you so much for participating in the poll. You can provide your responses in the chat. Thank you again. All right, on my screen here, I can see the results of the polls for those of you who could see the poll on the screen, and we have 80 responses. Just taking a temperature here, does anyone not see the poll results on their screen? Okay, some don't see. Okay. Just gonna talk about the top 3. Okay, all good. Okay, some can see. From what I'm seeing in the responses, out of the 80, 41% chose housing and homelessness. Then next is 18% for health and mental health. And then right after that is economic and workforce development at 11%. Here, let me see if I can. From the tech team, is there a way to post the poll for those who took the poll on their screen? Is there a way to post the poll results on the chat? Okay, we will email the poll results to the participants. Seems like we may not be able to post the results on the chat for those who are not able to see it. All right, it seems like, okay, I'll post it in the bottom bar. Okay. At the bottom of your screen, you know where you have icons, and then one of the icons says polls. I think if you click on it, you should see it. All right. Thank you all so much for providing your feedback. Thank you all so much for participating in the poll. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today and then voice your opinion. Thank you so much for working with us and collaborating with us. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate serving you. And I just wanted to say again, we're looking forward to, as the supervisor said, we are looking forward to working with you in the community to make sure that we better serve our district. Thank you again so much for taking the time to spend time with us today. Again, this event was brought to you and was put together by the budget team and the communications team. So I want to say a special thanks to Vicky, who's showing the PowerPoint, Lene, and Cynthia, who are, have been on the tech team, Kirk, who's also been, the Swiss Army knife of the team. And I also want to say thank you to all of our policy deputies for presenting today and all, showing you guys the work that we do in this office for you. I also want to say thank you to the supervisor for being a fearless leader and for leading this office and for her vision for the district. Thank you all so much. You guys have a wonderful rest of the evening. And if you want to know more about the county budget, you can put your phone onto, I forgot the name of this. You can scan the bar, and then the bar, and then it can send you over to the CEO's website, or you can also type on your browser ceo.lacounty.gov/budget. Again, thank you all so much for taking the time to meet with us, and you all have a wonderful rest of the evening.